Hello, I'm John and I'm a law student at Montfort University.
My name is Tshepo Madlingozi. I come from South Africa. I'm a senior lecturer in the University of Pretoria in law faculty. I'm also national advocacy coordinator for Khulumani support group, victim education. I'm here in my capacity as a board member of the Zimbabwe Advocacy.
So, in the context of transitional justice in Zimbabwe, what lessons do you think we can learn from experiences in South Africa?
Well, I mean, the first lesson, the primary lesson is that victims need to be very organized so they can impact the process and not wait for politicians to shape and to come up with the transitional justice mechanisms and processes. It's up to victims to mobilize and to say what kind of transitional justice they want, because otherwise politicians just make deals among themselves and leave out victims. So that's the first lesson. The second lesson, of course, is that it must be comprehensive, in the sense that it must touch on individual violations, it must touch on systematic violations, but also it must look at economic crime. Those are the things that we didn't do in South Africa, and we are seeing the aftermath of that. So those are the key lessons I think that Zimbabwe should learn from South Africa and avoid.
So thinking of the whole raft of reforms that we've had in the 1990s, for example, the Constitutional Court, the Human Rights Commission, a new constitution, you're saying that's not enough, or victims need to be given more of a voice? You can't just have those institutions, you've got to have the victims to make it work as well.
Absolutely. Institutions by themselves are just there on paper, unless victims know that they own them, so there must be a sense of ownership, so they can be legitimate as well. Otherwise, they lose legitimacy, and if they lose legitimacy, they will not change people's lives. So, yes, institutions are reform is the first place to start. It's a starting point, but then it must be owned by victims. Victims should have a sense of ownership, within the institutions.
And when we look to contemporary South Africa, we think of recent reports of limitations on the press, the presidency of Jacob Zuma. I mean, how do we reconcile that?
I mean, the positive thing that we have in South Africa is that we've got a very vibrant civil society that does not keep quiet. And of course, we must also acknowledge that it's expense, for them to operate, which is a good thing. And there are also institutions like the Judicial Court, the Human Rights Commission, that is also keeping government, in check. But of course, there are also worrying signs. The one that you mentioned, the limitations on media. It's a proposal, but if it comes into force, it will really compromise the nature of democracy in South Africa. I mean, democracy is not an event. It's a process that must be ongoing. So we're very vigilant as civil society activists, but we are very worried. The presence of Jacob Zuma, so far, nothing major has happened, but we are very worried about the limitations of civil society and the media.
And it's interesting also, the idea of transitional justice came from the dictatorships in South America. And on the subject of limiting press freedom, there's also been reports in Venezuela of press restrictions. So it's interesting to reconcile the origins of transitional justice and then see what's happening now.
That's right. I mean, that's what happens if you leave these things to politicians. People in Latin America thought, we want full transitional justice, we've got socialist governance, everything will be okay. And we see that that's not the case. I mean, if you leave these things to politicians, they will always be drawn. They will always be, cut them. So that's why there's a need for civil society to organize, for victims to mobilize themselves, and to keep watch, on politicians.
Absolutely. And another key factor as well is obviously the international community. And do you think President Jacob Zuma himself complies with the international community, works with the international community?
Yeah. What it does, South Africa has got a very big voice in the international relations arena, at the African Union and also the United Nations. So we are very respected as South Africa as a country, obviously because we are one of the biggest economies in Africa. So we've got a big role to play. But the question is, what kind of role are we playing? So, for example, in Zimbabwe, I think South Africa could have done better. I think it's not enough to simply say we are trying to mediate. South Africa has got a big voice. South Africa has got legitimacy with international players. We can do more. We created this Zimbabwe situation to force the two parties to the table, to force the GPA to be implemented in its full capacity.
Absolutely. And let's hope that South Africa uses that. Their voice and it makes a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.